Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you so much for our time together. We're starting the weekend again, so tonight I'll be preaching and at all the services tomorrow. We're going to be getting back into Acts chapter 15 as we begin to look at the judgment of James. We've got some great truth we'll be looking at with you tonight. But right now, let's go back to the book of 2 Timothy again. In chapter 2, verses 14 through around verse 19, the Apostle Paul talks about how false teachers really get started. He talks about words that ruin people. He talks about godless chatter that causes people to become more and more ungodly. He talks about teaching that spreads like gangrene, and gangrene is very deadly and smells very bad. And he talks about how people have wandered away from the faith and they destroy the faith of others. But then he gets down to something that gives us great hope. He says in verse 19, "Nevertheless, God's solid foundation stands firm." He said it doesn't matter about all these weird teachers. It doesn't matter about all these meaningless words and arguing about controversies. He said, God's solid foundation stands firm, sealed with this inscription. Now there's two parts to this inscription. The solid foundation of God in our life is sealed with two phrases. The first phrase, "The Lord knows those that are His." Now that's a great thought. I can build my life on a solid foundation, sealed with an inscription, "The Lord knows those that are His." God knows that I belong to Him. But then it's sealed with a second inscription. "And everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn away from wickedness." When I was just up in Korea, I saw such a contrast between what some would call the Western church and what some would call the African church and the South American church and the Asian church. And a lot of it had to do with lifestyle. As I listened to some of my African brothers talk and I listened to some of my South American brothers talk, they sounded just like us. The Western church is all about it doesn't matter how you live, and you can get drunk and sin and do all kinds of stuff and it doesn't matter. But the church in the rest of the world, where the church is not dying, where the church is growing and alive, we understand that second inscription. Everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn from wickedness. Brothers and sisters, it doesn't matter that we get surrounded by false teaching. It doesn't matter that there are people around us who with meaningless words and words that ruin the lives of others. You and I have a life built on the solid foundation of God. And that solid foundation that God has in our life is sealed with two inscriptions. Number one, that He knows us. And number two, that everyone who confesses the name of the Lord must turn from wickedness. So there's one thing that we do, and there's one thing that God knows. I challenge you. Know that God knows you. But number two, you know that you turn from wickedness.